What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Salt and Light podcast. Today, I'm here with Graham and Kurt.
Yes.
Keenan is living it up on vacation right now.
He's soaking in sun rays.
He's soaking in
down in Florida.
Yeah,
He seems like he'd be burned pretty bad if he did this.
Yeah, I don't see him as a big tanner.
Yeah.
yeah. We'll find
No
out.
offense, Keenan.
I think he
if you're
wears long
listening.
underwear during the summer.
Does he really?
Yeah,
He runs cold. I know that.
Yeah.
I think he wears long johns all year.
Yeah.
I think he told me that.
My grandpa does. Well, he did. He
all
died.
year long.
Yeah, grandpa died a while ago.
Really?
He was like 90-something.
And he always wore long johns.
He did wear long johns all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You see that in the Old West. If you remember the movie Paint Your Wagon with Clint Eastwood,
I haven't seen it.
when they would go wash in the river,
Okay.
they would bathe with their long johns on.
Oh, really?
Lee Marvin
Was that
the,
more because of
the,
modesty of
other
the
actor.
time?
I think maybe that was their thing.
Cinema.
Yeah.
But that's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
I wore long johns for a little bit growing up, and then Under Armour became a bigger thing.
Yeah.
And it kind of replaced that.
Yeah, you needed to go
the
synthetic.
cool version of
Yeah.
long johns.
And so when I go hunting and
Cotton
stuff,
kills.
I wear Under Armour. Is that right?
Cotton kills, especially if you go out in the cold.
Yep.
Gets
You
wet.
don't want to get it wet.
Boom. All of your body heat is gone. Speaking of body
Fascinating,
heat,
really.
Adam was talking about some kind of universe. And so that's like with goggles and
tell us
fake
about
things.
this.
But so if you could actually help inform me about that, then I'll have lots of incendiary comments.
Inform you about the Metaverse.
There you go. That's the word. Yeah.
Metaverse.
Well,
With
first,
church. Yeah.
do you guys think Keenan is going to listen to this?
I don't care.
I hope so.
Should we like do a test? Like, if Keenan, if you're listening to this right now, text me these exact words, and then we'll know if you're listening or not. Say, someone come up with
Text
Like
Metaverse
a code
to
word?
Adam.
Yeah, text
Metaverse.
Text Metaverse to me, and then
So
we'll
what is
know
that
if you're.
Metaverse?
You know this
Adam,
is a
tell us about
podcast, right, Adam? It's not live.
I do know it's not
okay,
live.
all right. So, all right.
Why is he
But I'll know if I get a
texting me
text Metaverse, then I'll know.
Sometime, yeah, you'll know what it was.
All
right.
And I'll be deeply hurt if I never get that text.
Wait, Keenan just texted me Metaverse.
That's amazing. I told him to text me,
It's
not
a miracle.
you.
Holy
So
Spirit's with us.
for those of you who do not know, the quote-unquote Metaverse has kind of been used recently to talk about anything that can be virtual reality or anything that you might use VR goggles for.
Right.
Mostly because of
And VR means
virtual reality.
okay, because Bill Simpson listens to this.
That is
You
correct,
might not know
yes.
that, yeah.
Part of that is because Facebook recently changed their name to Meta and started this push, putting a lot of money into virtual reality technology and stuff. So that kind of sparked a bunch of new ideas. And so basically, you could put on this headset, these goggles that cover your whole eyes, your whole eyesight,
Mm-hmm.
and it basically puts you in a virtual reality.
Yep.
Good,
Yep. No,
good name.
Yeah.
Pretty descriptive. So, and you can like walk around and you have little controllers and you can be in there with other people and like interact with people or whatever.
So just so you know, I've used virtual reality. I've used the Oculus set
Mm-hmm.
a couple years ago, and I will say it was pretty trippy and it worked fairly well as far as simulating what your actual like reality and your vision looks like just regularly.
Yeah.
And so you kind of get taken into this world as you're doing it. And it was my uncle Chad that had it, and I went over his house and I used it for like 30 minutes at a boring kind of family reunion, and it was like the coolest thing that, I could use with my time.
In the goggles, did you have an exciting family reunion? With the boring ones left?
Well, maybe in this will bring up the cons of virtual reality.
But
It detached me from what was going on.
Yeah.
And it created a good alternative world for me to, have fun in.
like a drug.
And so I got to do some target shooting in the virtual reality and some little games that it had. I will say, when I took it off, it took me about 5 minutes to readjust to normal life because it was very disorienting. Because I had like my brain, I felt like adjusted to this VR world that I was in, and I took it off and I was like, wow, like it took me a second to kind of adjust. It was almost like a feeling of motion sickness.
Now, Adam, though, teased us earlier on with a subset of virtual reality.
Yes, something that I think is really interesting, whether it would be beneficial or not, is kind of hard to tell at the moment. So I feel like this might get a little argumentative
And that's okay.
in nature, which is
Because
fine.
that's what the people want.
It's real dialogue. They want us to argue, yeah. But I just ask that we all, myself included, try to look at this from not our immediate opinions or our immediate criticisms, but maybe try to think of.
You're asking us to have
I think
an
other
your expectations are a bit high. Adam.
Sorry. I learned on Monday at staff meeting that I'm in the minority in this way, but I found out the other day that I saw a video advertising Life Church in Oklahoma. They have started church in the Metaverse.
Right.
And what that looks like basically is you go in virtual reality, and there's a recreation of what one of their locations looks like, including the lobby, like a welcome desk, an auditorium, and a screen and stuff. And there's volunteers or church staff or whoever in the same place as they normally would be on a Sunday, greeters, people to ask questions, people to talk to. Another important thing to note is you can talk with your real voice. You create like an avatar of yourself that could or could not look like you.
Do you watch yourself, or
No, it's like first person
point of view. And so, can I use the restroom in VR?
I don't think you have to.
No. Okay.
That's the beauty of the metaverse.
The virtual bladder.
Nope.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yep.
I have so many things I could
This
say.
is important to me. Okay.
So you can talk with your real voice and like interact with people, similarly to how you would in a real reality.
So
Right.
if I'm talking to, let's say I'm in this place, and I'm talking to you, is it because you have your goggles on at your house or something?
Yep.
So we're actually connected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
We can hear each other's actual real voices.
Oh, really?
And have a conversation like we are right now.
Yeah.
It would just be, I would be at my house and you would be wherever you live.
So many questions. So if the guy behind me is talking to somebody else, can I turn and tell him to be quiet? Is that necessary in this reality?
I don't know.
All
I
right.
think there are admins that could mute people,
Okay.
which is nice. You can't do that in real life. You can't
Right.
mute somebody.
Because hypothetically, say a bad actor wants to come into the virtual reality church and make up storm and
Right.
say bad things, and
Just like they
run
could in
around
real
and-
life.
Yeah, exactly. But
You
it's,
could.
it's probably easier to do it when you're hiding behind an avatar than
Yeah.
running in where you could be arrested by the police.
Yeah. You could just kick them out of the virtual reality world.
Right.
No
get
need for
booted.
police intervention.
Right. Exactly.
But carry on with your thoughts on this.
Well, and then you also you go sit in the auditorium and watch the
real life service.
their live stream, as if you were watching on
the
on
worship,
live stream.
and then Craig Rochelle comes out and gives
Yeah.
a 30-minute message.
Yep. And then I did see a clip actually yesterday of the point of view of one of the volunteers that would be in there. And they were like even giving like a gospel presentation after, saying like because you have controllers and you can like raise your hand and stuff. He was saying like raise your hand if you want to accept Jesus or whatever. And there were people raising their hands, and then they could like go and have a conversation with them after.
Was
Just something you can't really do as well just on a live stream format.
Is it a virtual Jesus, or is it?
No, it's the real.
him?
It's the real
Okay.
Jesus. Yeah.
So I think we should bat this around.
No.
Well, I want to
So-
put a disclaimer out that I am in no way an expert.
Of
A lot
course.
of this is
And this is all new
assuming
technology,
things.
and this is and like I told you a couple of days ago, it's inevitable that our culture and technology is going to go in this direction. I mean, Facebook is backing it. There's so much money behind it, and by the nature of capitalism and curiosity and the way things go, this is going to happen if there's enough money behind it and enough people in power want it to be, the case. They're pumping it out everywhere, and I think there's going to be an appeal to it, right? Virtual reality. What do you think would be like the appeal to something like that, Kurt, in our fleshly nature, to want to go into a VR world?
Well, we kind of seen it over the last year and a half with COVID, right?
Sure.
People have hunkered down and they said, you know what, this is kind of easy. And even though they know it's not good for them and it ends up kind of moving people toward depression, the alternative when you're in that pit is fear. I can't get out and do this anymore. And so it leads you down a frightening road. So that's kind of the initial thing. Mm-hmm. So there's a paraphrase of Ephesians 4 where it talks about God gave apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers to the church to build up the church for works of service, to come in unity and become one in Jesus, becoming like him. And in this one paraphrase, it says that the pastors and teachers are there to develop divine community and to train. Mm-hmm. So essentially to go out. Yep. So you could... Well, I'd question the divine community, but that could be spoken about as well. But the training for what? It seems as if once we start getting in this little universe, that it will be hard to go out from it.
Right.
That would be my...
Yeah. and that's, I think the pro and the con is, and I think this is the same thing with our online experience that we have at East Point, because we use live stream. And we promote online and through social media, and people have watched online. And because of our online platform, they've gotten exposed to the gospel and Jesus, and they've come to know about our community here, and then mustered up the courage to come in person. Because there's a fair amount of people out there who are pretty afraid to just come out in public and socialize. And I think a virtual reality world appeals to them. Now, I don't necessarily think that's a healthy substitute. I think, like you brought up, Kurt, it would lead them into probably worse mental health over the long period of time. But if you could use VR to expose someone to the gospel and to help them get into real life community, I think that's great. Almost the analogy of, Neo coming into the Matrix. You got to get in the Matrix to pull people out of it. Now, the question is, like, how much do you placate or come into the culture? And that's the tension. How much do you come into the culture? How much do you use technology that maybe some of it you even inherently disagree with in order to save some, in order to pull people out of this world? And I don't necessarily want to demonize VR either, because I'm not necessarily saying, oh, this is the worst thing ever. I think there's a lot of probably cool things you could use VR for. I mean, say you wanted to have a conference call with people in China, and it could use kind of like a Google Translate through your voice. And now you're talking with people in China, and it's almost like you're sitting in the same room together. That's kind of cool. Or if you're a kid and you want to go to a field trip to the Grand Canyon, and you're all in VR together, and you're doing a virtual tour of the Grand Canyon, and your teacher's showing you around and going, and this is that, and this is, now you're in Paris, and that's the Eiffel Tower, and you can see what it would look like in real life. I think there's like some cool potential to what VR could be, but I just worry with our human nature how we look for these comforts, and we really we get addicted to things that pull us out of the real world.
I feel like that is the big thing that I've been like really not really wrestling with, but thinking about a lot is thinking about trying to control other people's heart change, I guess. Yeah. Or thinking that if we provide this platform, that's not that they're gonna get comfortable with it or whatever, and then not think about how God can very, very easily just make that heart change in them for them to come visit on their own, instead of us just providing the place for that kind of reaching out to happen, and then trusting that God will do this stuff instead of us worrying about doing the stuff, if that makes sense. Because I will say about the baptism or about the live stream stuff. A lot of people watching, and then before because they don't feel comfortable, and then feeling prompted on their own that they're not. They're seeing community happen that they want to experience.
Mm-hmm.
Since being more part of the baptisms here, I think 100% of them have said at the beginning of telling their story that they started watching the live stream and then they just wanted to come and then they wanted to get baptized immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know the same thoughts about that your guys are expressing about the dangers of VR could also be said about live stream, right? It's very, very easy to get comfortable just sitting in your living room.
And I guess the question is, how do you balance attention and where do you draw the line, right? Because I know for myself, so for instance, I'll just take it to when I played video games in high school. I loved playing Call of Duty, first-person shooter, Xbox Live when it first came out. And I came home between sports seasons, had a ton of time on my hands, and from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. every day, I was playing Call of Duty. And I had this moment where I remember my parents called me downstairs and they're like, Graham, it's time for dinner. And I just like, I felt like I woke up from a dream like haze where I was like, how much time has gone by? And I looked outside, it's dark, and I've been playing video games for the past 3 hours. And I had this divine, and I really call it a divine revelation, that God was like, get this out of your life. It's doing nothing good for you. And I'm not trying to say like this is for everybody, but that's what God said to me. And so I don't bring video games into my house. I don't play Xbox. I don't do like it. I get why a lot of people might want to do VR, and I did it at my uncle's house and it was really fun for a time being, but like I would never bring it into my house because I know my nature is I get sucked into this stuff so easily. And that's why I don't even have certain apps on my phone. Like I don't play games on my phone because I have this personality that when I get hooked into these things, it's very appealing for me to like want to escape into them in my fleshly nature. And so God basically told me through the Holy Spirit, like I have to put strong boundaries around them. And I don't know if that resonates with other people, but that's how I am. What do you think about this, Kurt? You're over there kind of contemplating.
Yeah.
Cooking.
Yeah.
What direction do you want to take
I had
this
to hear
convo?
what you all had to say. Well, so there's a bit of a generational thing. So I pretty much go online to watch YouTube videos of point of view mountain biking or
which are pretty cool.
Some gal laying on her dog's bed and watching it, trying to get her off or something like that. So that was cute. I'm thinking about, I've been looking at John 17, and Jesus prays the Father, and he asks the Father that we would be with him where he is. So he's asking, Father, bring all these folks to be with me. And then he talks about that he is in the Father's in him, and we are in them. And I don't know. So, for instance, when I came in, I told you guys where I was. So I was over in a neighborhood that we go to.
Right.
There were 3 of us, and we knew. We knocked on the door. We knew one fellow name was Ed, and he and April have 3 little kids in the house. And Ed's friend Kyle and Matt were over. We got to spend about an hour there. We were able to pray over Ed, Matt, and Kyle because they had different things that were going on that we needed to do that with. Spent time, talked with April, played with their kids a little bit. And a fear would be just what you mentioned with the Call of Duty, that if we started getting into that universe, we'd lose our own.
Yeah.
That would be my fear, not to be like old man traditionalist, that we can't kind of flow with the times. But there's some things that I would be, probably because of all the dystopian movies that I've watched where it shows people losing their identity and their personality going into that. That's one type of thing. But I would fear it, I guess. But then again, I don't do social media of any kind. So
Right.
A lot of it's who you are. I can see, meetings and things that you spoke about, but when it starts getting into the church, one of my misgivings even in the church is that even if we didn't go online, but we just showed up on Sunday morning, there is a bit of a comfort to coming in and hiding up in the nosebleed seats or whatever and going home and no one has to say anything to you. You don't have to engage. And that's not what the Christian life is to be about. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, those are some of the thoughts there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think as I'm thinking about it, it's like, okay, I understand the heart of why Life Church is doing what they're doing. I think in all of these situations, you really have to keep the main thing, and you have to point people into a direction. And I do think, and I do respect their heart for wanting to reach people in these nooks and crannies of the world. And I think they're also trying to make a statement and be ahead of the game a little bit, I think that's kind of their MO, is they like to be on the horizon. They like to be, because of what they're doing, we're talking about them now, right? But I think at the same time, you have to just be careful not to just become part of the machine of the culture and just to respond to what the culture is doing. And I think the church is strongest in the areas where the culture is weak. And I think in a lot of ways it's like, wow, we live in a culture, and I'm not trying to say what they're doing is wrong, but while we live in a culture that does community poorly, can the church be a breath of fresh air for people that they come in and they're like, wow, they do community well. In a culture that's superficial, we do deep culture.
Yeah. I'd be curious to hear from Adam, because I haven't really thought about this that much. The way the interaction. So I'll say, for instance, we have a group of about 8 of us. We call it our No Place Left strategy group. No place left where the gospel hasn't been heard. So that's what we want to see happen. And we meet every Tuesday morning from 6:30 to 7:30 on Zoom, and we have prayer for the whole time. And we're just talking about it with a couple of guys today. It's really great. It's almost as though we're together, honestly. So I can see the benefits of technology because it allows that to happen.
Totally.
And nobody's ever absent, for the most part. We're just always there. So, Adam, tell me how we wouldn't lose intimacy in the VR world.
That's a good question. Well, it's not unlike a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
Well, how do you have intimacy in a Zoom meeting?
Well, you see the person rather than the avatar. So that might be a thing. So mostly because we're meeting Jesus at the time. And so we're hearing each other pray, and
you're picking up on the body language of the person.
I would say the Zoom meeting is not a replacement for a gathering.
Right.
But it can still be good. I'm just trying to. I think the thing for me is if there was no other option, then if for lack of anything else, this metaverse would be better than nothing. But if for some people they then replace community with it,
right,
then that can be destructive.
Right.
Yes, and that's kind of what I was talking about before, that I think we need to trust that God will put the desire, because when you experience community with people in real life in a church, it's like a feeling unlike anything else. And and I think even if you haven't experienced that yet, you know that you don't have it. So I think part of it is just trusting that it's easy to immediately think that this is meant to be a replacement. But I watched an interview with Craig Groeschel and Carrie Newhoff talking about this stuff. And it's very much not a replacement. It's just an additional medium to try to take advantage of, that could be used for bad things, and try to use it for good things.
Of course.
And he also shared it hasn't been too long that they've been doing this, obviously. But he said that they've already had, they already have stories of people. One in particular, some guy from far away, obviously couldn't attend the church in person, had never been into a church building before, and didn't have anybody in his life that was a Christian to invite him or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he heard about Life Church, or he somehow stumbled upon the VR version of Life Church, and that appealed to him, and he went to that. And because of that, I think in that first service that he attended, he accepted Jesus in his heart, and he's been on fire for God in his community, and has been changed, has had life change in that way, solely because of this.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think, can I say one thing to this? Because I think this is the tension too. So you're going to have those stories, and we have those stories with even our live stream. And I think it's great. I think what we have to be careful about is we have this awesome technology in a lot of different ways, Zoom, live streams, now going into VR here in this example. And it's like, I do know, on the other hand, you have a decent amount of people who are using these as a means of a pseudo community, or that might not be, almost kind of like the Pop-Tarts instead of the steak, right? And so there's a lot of people that are going online on Sunday, and they know they should be coming into church in person, but they're like, at least I'm watching online, or at least I'm listening to the podcast the next day on Monday. And so I just think at the same time, we have to be careful that by creating these avenues, we're also not creating like a kind of hammock for some other Christians to kind of rest in and go, well, this is great. Because I do know a lot of people that I'm like, hey, I haven't seen you at church in years. And they're like, well, I've been watching online. And I think those people, and some of them have legitimate reasons. I talked to a woman who had one lung, and she's genuinely afraid of COVID, and rightfully so. But then I know many people who, they're doing it for convenience sake,
mm-hmm.
right? And for me, I'm just like, I think at the same time, we have to make sure people know what these technologies and why we have these things in place. They're for people who really need them, but that people need to know that these hammocks shouldn't be rested in, that
mm-hmm.
they need to be pursuing real community. And
Right. It'd be very temporary, like a motel.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I'm a bit offended at your disparagement of Pop-Tarts.
Well,
Sure,
just
I do
thinking,
that.
there was a
Pop-Tarts.
callback
Yeah.
to last week.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah.
The Pop-Tart instead of the steak
Yeah. Okay.
of
I don't know
his
if I
presence.
remember that. Was I here last week? I
Yeah,
was,
remember you talked
Yeah,
about Pop-Tarts.
Keenan was
and
going
you
on
broke
and
your
on
fast
about
because
his
of,
food.
Oh, so
what
he
was
was.
it,
Keenan was droning again, so I probably just.
Oh yeah. That's fair.
Yeah.
But to that, I mean, it's not something to just put out there and hope that people get the picture. Like it would take a lot of intentionality with the church that is putting up that as a platform to, and I think it's actually easier to get people out of that comfort in the VR space than it is with the regular live stream, because that way you're sitting on your couch and you can get up and leave and
mm-hmm.
go get some more coffee, and you miss stuff, and then you don't have to type anything in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
But with VR, you're walking around and you're sitting, people come up to you and talk to you, and you can't avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a lot easier to have conversations with people that way than it is through a chat on live stream.
Mm-hmm.
Can I preach it for a moment?
Yeah, preach it.
I think in the Western church, we spend an awful lot of time trying to accommodate people.
Sure.
Rather than saying, this is what Jesus has for us, and this is
Right.
what we're to do. And so we kind of end up looking for, can I say we do it here too?
Yeah, we do.
All right, yeah.
We have our own means. Yeah.
So if we look at what Jesus tells us, that if you want to be my follower, you need to put away your selfish ways, pick up your cross, and then follow after me if you want to be his disciple. That's a hard saying. And what often we try to do is to look for the lowest common denominator, the hammock, as you might put it. And so the question would be, almost in this discussion, is not whether this VR metaverse world is okay, but are we seeking first the kingdom of God and his righteousness? And as we do that, if and only option at some point is this, then do that, but keep seeking him, and we know that the Spirit will then guide us into the appropriate place, because you can see an advantage of all of these things that's there. And I think one thing we could say is, let's not be satisfied even with what we see in the regular church environment. There's more to be had than that.
Exactly.
And if we looked at, if we were honest with ourselves and went back home in our dark room and created our own obedience quotient to how we're following Jesus, I'm gonna. You had to be honest. You and Jesus are working that out.
Right.
I'm not satisfied with where I am on that deal.
Yeah, and I think, not trying to be too punny here, but or too meta here, but I think the metaverse is actually a good analogy or a good representation of what as a church we experience in real life, right? So it's like people are going to this church in the metaverse. They're experiencing maybe like this service and this, they're going in and they're seeing the greeting team and they're watching the service, but constantly, hopefully in that service, they're pointing people to the real thing, which is, guys, this isn't the real thing, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I think even in real life, the church should be that in our culture, in this world that we're living in, is saying there's two kingdoms. There's a kingdom of darkness. There's a kingdom of this flesh and this world and our sinful desires, but there's a completely other kingdom that Jesus came to establish, and it's a kingdom that brings freedom from our bondage and our addictions, and it's contrary to what you would expect. It's an upside down kingdom. It's a kingdom where you, instead of get back at your enemies, you forgive them. It's a kingdom where instead of hoarding your stuff, you give liberally. It's a kingdom where instead of indulging in your flesh, maybe you make some sacrifices and you experience self-control. And hopefully as a church, we can kind of push people out of the metaverse that we live in. And if I can preach it a little bit, in this world that we think where we're running in this rat race where everything's important, and we have made these own little worlds for ourselves, and in a sense the gospel pokes that bubble, and explodes it, and we realize, I've been living for the wrong things. And so in a lot of ways, church on Sunday should be the most disruptive thing we experience on a regular basis,
and a catalyst for more disruption throughout the week. Should slingshot us into new places. Yeah.
Instead of trying to find a hammock or comfort in it.
Yeah.
And there's comfort in the gospel for sure, but in a lot of ways, it's disruptive,
Our default, because of the broken world, is to always be a comfort seeker. Because it's just the natural thing. So only being filled with the Spirit can we be motivated enough to get out and do it. And so an analogy of that, back when I was in high school, college, cross-country track in Minnesota, you'd have to train year-round. So you'd have to go out and you'd have to run in the winter, and it'd be 50 below wind chill. And the hardest thing was just to take that first step out the door. Yep. And then once you got going, you got a furnace going, and it was no big deal. You were like anywhere. And so that's the only thing. Whatever Meta, Zoom, online, you need to be able to take that step out the door at some point in time, and maybe show up on a Sunday morning, or it might be show up to help your neighbor. It might be show up to help the homeless guy. Who knows what it might look like. But whatever it is, if it looks like we're going to get anchored to that, then we've got a problem. Then you go back to your video game where dinner was called and you forgot where you were.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the world our flesh wants to live in, and that's where Satan loves us to be, in the lullaby of living in our flesh and watching time pass by. But Jesus wants us to engage. He wants us to get into the game. And sometimes that, like you said, it takes a moment of discomfort, but that's where the joy is. That's where the life's at.
We're done?
Do you think that's a good landing?
I think
point?
we're done.
That's a good ending point.
Yeah.
Cool.
I feel like we could talk a lot more for like hours even about just the different aspects of and the implications and whatever of church in the metaverse. But unfortunately, that'll have to wait for next week if we choose to bring it up again. But thank you guys for tuning in. Let us know down in the comments what you think of church in the metaverse. See you next week.